Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning. This is lesson 1-2.9. What about the ladies? Today we're going to be exploring a little bit more of what it meant to be a lady in medieval times. Here I'd like to begin talking about some of the more powerful ladies within the realm. In most medieval societies, women could inherit wealth and power. They did not have the same probability of inheritance, but they most definitely could inherit wealth and power. Usually this occurred when there was no male child within the family. It would then pass to a direct descendant of the previous lord, that is, his daughter. Sometimes it would go to an uncle or to a cousin, depended on the particular society, but frequently it did go down to the daughter. Now, when that daughter was married, it was typically her husband who would exercise that power. But unmarried women, which were not all that common when they're young, but widows could hold real power and real wealth. And we do see this happening quite a bit throughout the Middle Ages. For example, one of the most influential people of the Middle Ages, Eleanor of Aquitaine, was an extremely powerful duchess in her own right. Now, when it came to holding power, it was tricky because most women were married young. And they may hold lands and it may be in their names, but it's their husbands who have the real power. It would be the husband who ruled that particular duchy or county or manor, be it what it may. It would be the husband who is ruling. But this does not mean that the husband ruled by himself all the time. Whenever a lady's husband was away, the woman would usually rule as the regent. This is that she would hold all the powers while her husband was gone. This was also the case when the Lord dies and there are young children involved. The widow would hold the power of that Lord right up until the point where the child could take over and become the new count or the new duke. So widows could really actually hold quite a bit of power and quite a bit of wealth within medieval society. And usually when we see a woman with real significant power, they are a widow. Now, down to the lower levels, looking at the barons and the knights, we see the role of the lady of the manor being very similar. Now, effectively, a wife is the property of the Lord. We don't like to use that word property to describe human beings, but really when you look at how wives were treated and how law regarded them at this time, they were kind of treated more like property. But that doesn't mean that they don't have real authority. Again, just like with our higher lords, when the lord of a manor is absent, it is the lady who's usually left in charge. And her duties include anything that might be the duty of the lord of the manor, including commanding and oversight of vassals. So we do have women who are very much in control of the lives and fortunes of knights and barons that are their peers. Now, family life for most ladies, and here we're talking about nobility still, was different than it was today. Among the nobility, marriages were arranged by parents. This is not a boy and a girl meet, fall in love, have a romance, and get married type of story. I'm sorry, that's not what Middle Ages was for nobility. There was no romance involved. It was very much a political or economic arrangement. If you have two manors that have adjoining lands, those two families might choose to join each other by an arranged marriage of their children, combining their lands, combining their wealth, combining their influence. Typically speaking, young women were married between the age of 12 and 16. Men were married generally between the age of 16 and 22. So people were married fairly young at this time. Additionally, when it comes to family life, a lot of children died at this time. We just didn't know a lot about medicine. We didn't know a lot about maternal care, caring for pregnant women. And in order to survive, a family needed to make sure that the lady of the house had many children. So we're talking about generally large families here. You might have a lady have anywhere between 4 and 8 children, with the expectation that the lady would have one of her children die, and probably more of her children die to disease or some other factor. It was just a fact of life in the Middle Ages. Now, when we get down to serfdom itself, serfdom is going to get the least of my attention here because really we have covered the roles of people engaged in serfdom, and women serfs really did the same thing that their husbands did. Their roles were quite the same. If their husband was a farmer, they were a farmer. If their husband um, moved manure around the manor for his job, that's what the wife did too. I mean, their roles really were pretty well intertwined. Both genders were expected to spend much, if not most, of their time doing manual labor for the Lord. Women, though, do have the additional burden. I hate saying burden as a parent, but burden of caring for children and raising children and doing all this work while pregnant, while having small children, is, of course, a struggle. And that was just a part of medieval life for most of the women involved. And that is our story today on What About the Ladies? I know it was a short one, but we'll talk more about this at a later time. Goodbye.